Hello.
Hi. Hello.
This is Hugo Girl, the podcast. My name is Haley.
I'm Lori.
I'm Amy.
And we are recording on a stormy Monday night in Atlanta, Georgia. This month we read The Sword and Stone by T.H. White, originally published as a standalone novel in 1938, but the whole volume, Once and Future King, which has 4 books, was published in 1958. The Sword and the Stone won the Retro Hugo in 2014. Arthurian lore is wide-ranging and has many sources, but White primarily used Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur. Why is it in French, you ask? Because even though these are Celtic stories, the French are great storytellers and help popularize them. Do we have some housekeeping updates?
Yeah. We got an email from Dan. This was not too long after we released the Sweetbirds episode. And so Dan is responding to our accidental clone duology with some very interesting thoughts and insights. So I'm going to read Dan's email, which Dan gave me permission to do. Dan says, "Longtime listener, first time write-in, as it were. I feel compelled to write in to respond to your unexpected cloning duology of episodes. What most clone sci-fi ignores is that we have always had clones among us, identical twins and other multiples. I am one of them. Many of the seemingly probing questions of clone sci-fi can be answered by putting down the books and asking the real clones. Can you live forever by cloning yourself after death and raising the clone in the same way? Of course not. Just like I am not living 2 lives at once by having a clone. Is it incest when sci-fi identical clones have sex? Of course. Just like when real identical clones have sex. What if they have a hive mind? Same answer, but now the author has added one of the most obnoxious stereotypes of multiples. There is plenty of wonder in real-life clones without straying into sci-fi. For example, my brother and I share the same DNA and almost the same upbringing, but I am non-binary transgender and he is not. Sci-fi authors can write about clones, but they need to consider the perspectives of real-life multiples first. If they do, they will enrich their writing. If they don't, they will waste words asking questions we know the answers to."
Get him, Dan.
Yeah, I thought that was very insightful. And then I replied and I thanked Dan for the email. And then I asked Dan if there was any clone sci-fi that they thought did a good job. And here's where I did not expect the conversation to go. Dan said, "Star Wars, Attack of the Clones." I know, Attack of the Clones did something right. Hear me out, says Dan. Dan says Boba Fett is a genetic clone of Jango Fett, but because of their relationship and difference in age, they are treated as son and father, which feels natural and correct. When Jango Fett is killed, no one acts like Jango is immortal because Boba or the other soldier clones of Jango are still alive. As we learn in future Star Wars stories like The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, Boba grows to be similar to his father, yet distinctive, just like many children. So, praise for Star Wars Attack of the Clones. And I told Dan I did not expect this conversation to veer into praise for the prequels, but hey, you know, nothing is all bad, right?
Yeah. It makes sense because in a lot of divorces, a lot of the parents are like, you got all your good genes from me. You know, people get weird about, you know, because like a kid has half of your genes, whereas a clone would be, you get all the genes from the one parent. So,
So if that clone turns out bad, you got no one to blame but yourself.
you're like, oh, you turned out just like your mom.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's true. If one of the parents on Cytine is disappointed in the way their kid comes out, it's like, well, it's all in the raisin, buddy.
Or if little baby Boba does something bad.
Nature and
Jango.
nurture.
Well, anyway, thank you very much, Dan, for sharing your perspective and your thoughtful emails back and forth. And then the conversation got fun into Star Wars, so that was cool.
That email was definitely Star Wars, not Lord of the Rings.
It was.
100%.
Thanks, Dan.
Are we ready for some plot summary?
Let's do it.
All right. Young medieval boy Arthur, known as the Wart, lives at the castle of the Forest Sauvage as a ward of the lord of the manor Sir Ector and his son Kay. We learn a lot about feudal life, haymaking and boar hunting, and eventually the boys get a tutor in the form of Merlin, the famed wizard. Through a series of magical adventures, the Wart in particular learns about the nature of man, violence, democracy, and more as he experiences life as various animals. Throughout the book, we meet a delightful cast of characters, from bumbling knights like King Pellinor and Sir Grummore Grummersome to Robin Hood and Morgan Le Fay. Then, in the last 3 pages of the book, we learn that in London there's a sword and an anvil, and whosoever can pull it out of it is rightwise born king of all England. The Wart accidentally pulls it out, not knowing what it is, and thence becomes king of England.
The end. Nope. Then there's 3 more books.
Yes, 3 more very different books. Cool. Well, let's hop into Goodreads. I found one that I think Lori will appreciate very much. This is from Vaishali. She gave it 2 stars. I found this rather stiff, male-centric, and anti-pagan. Instead, Mists of Avalon is a superior book that...
Oh, that didn't age well.
Exactly. Okay. Instead, Mists of Avalon is a superior book that engages in a more holistic, behind-the-scenes take on Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. a holistic Arthur stop. And also,
Yeah.
Miss of Avalon is awful.
Well,
You heard it here first.
I loved Mr.
She said what
Avalon
she
in
said.
high school, but it's, impossible to divorce it from what I now know about Marion Zimmer Bradley. So
Yes. Should we do a brief detour? Because
Right.
I forget why she's so horrible.
Oh, there's a lot of child abuse.
yeah,
yeah, I think
We
Yeah.
could just leave it there.
Yep.
But also, the book was boring when I tried to reread it when I was like 28.
It was boring. I also tried to reread it when you tried to reread it, and I really liked it in high school. But as a grown up, I was not into it.
I have one very short one. And I liked its conciseness. Bionic Gene, who gave this book 3 stars, said, "Whether you like it or not, it's very much a matter of taste."
Okay, I'm gonna just pick an excerpt. The Geek Problem on Goodreads gave it 1 star and concluded with, "I'm gonna stick to the Disney version, I think."
Does he become a squirrel in the Disney version?
Yeah.
What? That's not in the book, though, right?
No.
Okay.
No.
All
They
right.
so I only managed to get halfway through the Disney one just because I was like, oh, maybe this isn't for me. It's very different. They take a lot of liberties. They make characters do other things that they don't do in the book. So
Apparently, there's one scene in the movie that was in the original version of the book. Which
Yeah.
is
Madam Mim.
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
I have opinions about that. That's one thing I actually have thoughts about.
Okay, cool.
there's a lot of cool stuff they added in later versions, which I'm kind of sad about. But he goes like he becomes a turtle. In a
You mean they
different
took out in later versions?
or they added or took out? Yeah, something like that.
There's definitely no turtle. So they must have taken
he
it out.
changed stuff, so there were additions and removals.
Yeah,
but
that's what
I
I meant.
think removing Madam Mim was a mistake. I love that part.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the lady with the hair.
Yeah, and they have the wizard battle where they're just
Yeah,
like,
that is cool.
I'm this, which
Yeah.
is ripped off in The Sandman. Or you could call it homage. Where's
Well,
the line?
Interesting. Neil Gaiman had an intro to the version I read,
Oh,
and apparently he very much liked. He this was one of the first fantasy books he ever read, and so I imagine we could call it an homage.
yeah.
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 Okay.
So Goodreads, cool. My first talking point, I think, to start off this discussion, I would like to know your first experience with King Arthur and Arthurian lore.
Ooh.
I think it's probably the movie version of The Sword and the Stone. But when Kevin and I rewatched it like a week ago, and I didn't remember very much of it except for the songs. So I guess the movie version and then the sing-alongs more than anything.
That's a really good question. I had a version of I had Once and Future King as a child. I know that I had a copy of this. So I think I must have read part of it as a kid. And when I was rereading it for this, a lot of it was very familiar. So this copy I have now I got in high school. So I know I read part of it at least for some class in high school. But the first really impactful version I remember is First Night, starring
Oh.
Richard Gere.
Okay, I was just trying to look that up.
And who plays Sabrina? What's her name? Julia Ormond?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You mean Guinevere?
Yeah, but she also played Sabrina. And I always
Sabrina in the
remember
movie Sabrina with
I always
Harrison
remember
Ford.
her playing Sabrina.
Oh,
Not the Teenage Witch.
Yeah.
yeah, you really lost me.
Yeah.
No, yeah, Julia Ormond and Richard Gere in First Night.
I remember that.
Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh, yeah.
We can't do Camelot. It's a
Oh,
silly
yeah.
place.
I did. We watched that at camp, so that must have been first.
But also, I also loved Robin Hood Men in Tights. Almost all of my first exposure to King Arthur was movies. And then the Merlin TV movie from the 90s that had Sam Neill as Merlin.
I've
It
never
had-
seen that.
Oh,
I think
it's
that
great.
was behind me a little bit.
I've also never seen Men in Tights. I did think.
Oh man,
so
it's really
good.
funny.
If you like Mel Brooks movies, it's good. But that same version where Merlin is Sam Neill, Isabella Rossellini plays Nimue, his girlfriend, and it's wonderful. Yeah, so I just think it's always interesting because my family was really into King Arthur. I'm not quite sure why, but
I feel like it's always been a part of my brain. I don't remember when I first came across it, but I know that when I watched Holy Grail or watched First Night or whatever, I already knew about it. So
Yeah.
somehow it seeped into my consciousness.
yeah, I mean,
But I don't know how.
I wonder if your nieces know about it.
I would be very curious about that as well. Maybe I'll ask
I
them.
wonder if, as Anglo-Saxons, it's just something you're born knowing.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that's part of it. My father's mother was born in Britain, and my dad always talked about King Arthur and stuff like that. So it's part of my heritage, I guess. T.H. White, he was known as Tim. I think he was a funny guy. I was reading about him. It's very unclear whether he was gay or not, but he really liked birds.
Yes, he did.
And I think one of the reasons that this book is so interesting to me is he loves nature so much. That's why we'll talk about all the various animal lessons, but I thought that was interesting. He tried to raise his own hawk, and he did not do well.
I read that he spent the war in Ireland because he was a pacifist, which explains a lot of Wart's lessons in this book, I think.
For sure.
Oh, I found a summary of this book on the Book a Minute website. Can I read it?
Yes,
please
I
do.
love these.
Okay. Merlin. Wart, I will teach you about life by turning you into all kinds of animals. Wart. Neat. Now I can single-handedly invent civilization. Wart pulls a sword from a stone. Everybody thinks he should be king because they are superstitious. The end.
Well, and that's the funny thing is that he pulls the sword from the stone, but also he was Uther Pendragon's son anyway. So didn't he have claim to the throne?
Yeah, I need like the backstory.
I guess that's how they find him, because he pulled the sword from the stone.
Yeah. Well, and so
something.
this book takes liberties obviously with the lore. So Uther Pendragon was not the William the Conqueror, but in this book he basically is. He comes over with the Norman invasion in 1066.
Yeah, man, I was so confused why they kept referring to them as Normans, and I was like, I have to remind myself that this is a jumble of every historical event.
Yeah, and that makes it confusing because the real Arthurian legend is set like in like the 600s or
Right.
something. So it kind of jumps around, and then when you throw in like, oh, and here's Robin Hood, it's kind of like when Marvel movies intersect. It's like, oh, there's Batman. Like,
Well, I mean, this is a book where you can have Robin Hood in the Renaissance and also refer to Oxford and policemen and other various anachronisms. I think anachronism is like one of the points of the book.
For
almost.
sure.
Yeah.
But I understood that to be because Merlin was living backwards. So I kind of thought Merlin injected those things. So then when there were like genuine things that were very inconsistent, I got a little bit confused. And I was like, maybe was Uther Pendragon French? And then I had to like think about it a little. And I was like, no, the book is just being silly. But this, like, some of the stuff makes sense because, you know, Merlin has brought that idea into the story. But then some of it is just a little confusing.
Yeah, the narrator says some stuff that doesn't make sense, like anachronistically or chronologically.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
yeah, there's discrete anachronisms like talking about Hitler in one scene, and then there's like lore anachronisms like Uther Pendragon being William the Conqueror. Speaking
It's a book outside of time.
truly, and that keeps it kind of fun. Like I can't think of another book like this in terms of interspersing so much modern stuff into old stuff.
Benjamin Button.
That's just straight backwards.
I
though.
thought about Merlin as a little bit of a Benjamin Button situation.
I cannot stop thinking about how he's born backwards in time. It's kind of like when I watched Memento and had to make a map.
Oh, gosh.
So Merlin is born, I'm guessing, probably around 2000 or something, and then he starts living backwards and meets. So okay, so this will make you sad. So the reason that Merlin cries the first time he meets Wart, because that's the last day he's ever going to see him, because he's living backwards.
Oh.
Isn't that sad? So like every day he has to pretend like he hasn't seen him all day, and then the next day, tomorrow, will be.
Oh my God, it's like Hyperion.
Yes, it's like the backwards baby.
Where
I
the
didn't think
baby,
about-
yeah,
Oh, I
because they
didn't
have to
think about
pretend that,
that.
like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, your birthday party, you didn't just turn 5 yesterday.
No, I
You're
know. I
definitely
wanna
still
reread it.
4.
Yeah, so that scene where he like falls and when he goes to chase Cully, and like, you know, Merlin knows what's happening because he's been living backwards. He talked to him yesterday on the second day that he met him, and this is the last day. So
Oh my God, that is sad. Merlin reminded me of Dr. Manhattan from The Watchmen, and also of Paul Atreides, because he gets confused about where he is in time. Like, is it happening? Has it already happened? Is it yet to happen? Because he can see all of that at the same time.
Is he getting, like, bodily older?
I would
or
assume so.
younger.
I think he's also very long-lived, because if he's lived to see Hitler and he's still alive, he's like Yoda, I guessing. Like in 900 years old, you train Merlin here.
Why, Haley, you've brought us to my Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. Merlin is, in fact, like Yoda.
I have that.
That's
as well.
mine. That's mine too.
Oh my God, we got it at Star Wars. Let's do it early.
What? This is like a jackpot. Like 3 Yodas on the slot machine.
We had a hacky sack. We had a hack.
Merlin is basically Yoda, Wart is Luke, Dog Boy is Chewbacca, and they're sword fighting.
Exactly. Dog boyish.
I did not get Chewbacca.
I had to take some liberties. I remember that I haven't fought for Star Wars in a long time, and I decided to give it the old college
What's
try.
that little dog that loves Wart? That's Chewbacca.
Oh, Cavil?
yeah, there you go.
All right, so I want to take a detour into why I love Arthurian legend, part 2. So, so I had to read. We were assigned in 10th grade summer reading The Once and Future King. I read it. It was a lot for a 15-year-old. But when I get to college, I'm an English major and a French major, and we have to take certain. And I think Lori did this as well. I had to take certain number of classes in different time periods, like 1700 to 1900. You know, present and then medieval. And I, knowing my distaste for Lord of the Rings, I had to take a French medieval lit class, and I was like, oh my God. But I took a class at UGA from a professor named Dr. Kathy Jones, who was the best professor I've ever had in my entire life. Really brought the class to life. She would go on to write one of my law school recommendation letters, and I had no idea that French literature was based around so much Arthurian lore. So we just read this stuff, and I just ate it up.
But the French version?
But the French version. So like Chrétien de Troyes was a 12th century French writer. He's known to be the author of maybe like the first real novel. And the French versions use a lot of stuff from Geoffrey of Monmouth. And they don't really talk about Arthur so much, but all the other knights. Like they were really into like chivalry and like telling the story. They were really into like the affair between Lancelot and Guinevere.
I bet they were. Lancelot always sounded like a French name to me.
Yeah.
So is Guinevere, I guess, for that.
So I think my love of this kind of stuff when I was younger in movies was cemented with college Haley thoughts on French Arthurian lore.
I just love a good sad romance. And I always got the impression that Guinevere, had to marry King Arthur, but King Arthur really loved Guinevere, but Guinevere really loved Lancelot. So I love a good love triangle. That's my main connection to it.
I am a little sad that we didn't read one of the other ones because this one is basically a kid's book. It's not the best.
Yeah.
Like the soap stuff would be so much more fun with like the second or third book. There's incest.
Man.
There's
Yeah.
deception sex. There's betrayal. There's so much good stuff. This
I
one is
learned
just-
all that in the Mists of Avalon and sequels.
I know. This one is just like, I'm a fish.
I know I read these at some point because Morgan Le Fay shows up.
Yeah, and it gets
is like
real
a
weird.
big deal.
Yeah.
I remember reading about her.
I decided to keep reading last night, and so I read about another 100 pages, and there's a scene where they trap a unicorn and then kill the unicorn. It was horrible, but like, it's interesting.
Knowing what's in store for Arthur made me sad. Reading about him as such a like very sweet, genuine, guileless little boy.
I know.
He just wants to be friends with a goose. And then I'm like, woo, that time that your sister's going to trick you into impregnating her is going to be hard on you.
For real time.
Yeah, and
real
it's hard for Merlin because poor Arthur, the entire book is like, I don't want to be a squire, and Merlin has to be like, yeah.
Well, good news and bad news.
It's okay. Yeah.
Did the Sword and the Stone win the Retro Hugo or the whole book?
Sword and Stone.
Interesting.
I think because it's a very long book.
Oh yeah.
I was very surprised how long the whole thing is.
Yeah, I mean, it is 4 separate novels. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's very rare that a book side teen length wins the Hugo. I think most are like, between 3 and 5.
I think it's a legit Retro Hugo win. It's had a lot of influence on a lot of things.
Sure.
I think.
Oh,
Obviously.
absolutely. Yeah.
Pockety, walkety.
I was proud to see that came from the source material. For the most
The
part.
scene, yeah. Mhm.
I mean, all that that kind of word play, I guess,
Yeah.
for lack of a better, it's very much a part of the original book.
When I rewatched the cartoon, I was impressed by how much of it was the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so close, but they just like rearrange some things to make it more kid friendly.
They do, and the character of it is different, though. I think something that struck me because I had already started reading it, and I was like maybe a third of the way in, and then we watched the movie. And in the book, everyone is so nice. Like even Kay is like. He just doesn't know how to be, but he's not like a bad guy, which Merlin outright says, you're not a bad guy.
Yeah.
You just kind of don't know how to be. And in the cartoon, everyone is very mean to each other, except for, Arthur's fine. But I just wondered like what makes children's filmmakers and cartoon makers think that kids just want to see people be so mean to each other. Because like Sir Hector, he loves art. He's nice to him. He's so happy when he comes home and he's safe. And even in the scene, the one that really struck me the most is when the wart, I don't like calling him that, the wart meets Archimedes and he kind of offends him and they have a little back and forth. And then there's such a sweet moment where Archimedes is like, I shouldn't have been so petty. You just didn't know. And I'm sorry. And he's like, I'm sorry. And then they're friends. And in the movie, the owl is just like, I hate you, you're the worst. And everyone's like bopping each other on the head. And I just thought, wow, the tone of this is so different.
I wonder if it's because there was no there's no real villain in the book, right? Like they go on a couple adventures and there's some bad guys, sort of like mini bosses to defeat.
Yeah, but there's no antagonist.
Right. So I wonder if it's just to give the story more tension, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, I had the same feeling, especially Kay. Kay was so much better in the book than he was in the movie.
And Sir Ector, because they basically have Wart like Cinderella in the movie, and he treats him like okay, but not like a son. And in the book, it's pretty different. He treats him and he calls him his son.
Maybe it also gives him becoming king a little bit more force.
Rags to riches.
Yeah, that's true.
If you do the Cinderella version where you're
That's true. That's a
You're
good point.
and now you're
Yeah.
king. I don't know.
In all those old Disney movies, ain't nobody got parents. Like,
Man, parents are always dying left
Yeah.
and right in the Disney movies. Left and
yeah.
right.
Also, I think even though I love books about nice people, I think a lot of people don't like that. Hence the scourge of reality television. Everyone just fighting all the time.
I just binge watched the entire first season of Selling Sunset, and I am now obsessed with all those trashy people.
Oh, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Are they just real
It's a lot
estate
of-
agents?
A lot of trashy people.
I guess
getting,
I'm too
getting
much
drunk
of
on
a-
white wine and fighting.
I'm too much of a baby. I'm like, when can I have a new season of British people making cakes and being polite to each other?
Don't worry, I like this too.
I've been watching Horatio Hornblower episodes on YouTube. So,
Cute.
all right, I think we should discuss the various lessons.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what does the future king learn from the animals?
First, we get turned into a tench and also a roach, which are two fish I've never heard of in my entire life.
I was
Correct,
imagining that the roach was a literal, like a bug.
Don't tell
for
Amy that.
a while.
It's okay, I knew. It's okay. Context clues told
Yeah.
me he was a fish.
I figured it out eventually, but I was like, okay, well, it's like a water bug.
But I feel like I've heard of most fish. Like a roach? Come on.
I've heard of most
He
fish.
couldn't have said like a halibut, a cod, a salmon. Like I could keep going.
Those
But
do not live in the moat outside of his house.
a roach? Okay, a trout?
Well, I mean, this is a fantasy, though.
Well,
He could have
that's
put a shark in there if he wanted to.
Yeah, an eel.
So what does he learn from the fish? That was a little lost on me.
There are two lessons. One, he helps a lady who needs help. So the meek deserve mercy.
Okay. All right.
And also the old pike that looks like Uncle Sam, literally described as Uncle Sam in anachronism, is the dangers of totalitarianism. He rules that moat.
Oh man, that got right past me.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. I just was like, well, he's a fish.
I saw the helping the poor one. That was a little more
Yeah.
clear, but yeah, that totalitarian one. Whoa. Okay, he snuck that one in there. All right.
Yep.
And then the hawk, he learns about military stuff.
Yeah. In the muse, the birds are militaristic and kind of psychotic.
Cully.
The one is
Cully.
not kind of psychotic.
Cully and Mulder.
But Cully was. I thought Cully, the way they did Cully was interesting because Cully clearly has he's teetering on the edge of some sort of break.
Yeah.
But he's still there enough to know that he's a danger.
Yeah.
And so he's like trying to get Wart to like go away, I'm gonna hurt you. And Wart, I guess he's like brave and stuff.
And he's a colonel too, so he's like a veteran.
Yeah, and like, but also didn't make a lot of sense because he wasn't that old, Cully. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess Wart learns. What does he learn? I mean, he's brave and he confronts Cully, but also he gives Cully a chance, and he knows Cully. I don't know.
I think
it's like
I think the birds are kind of like the Spartan civilization. Like it's all just rough and tumble and like not the nicest way to live, probably.
Maybe it's just showing him various extremes of things.
Oh, 100%,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I did like that Cully is everyone sympathizes with Cully. Like
Yeah.
he is dangerous, but it is acknowledged that he doesn't want to be dangerous. He's not well.
Right.
And he's not in control, even though he's trying really hard and he doesn't mean anyone any ill will. And I think that's an important thing to show.
I agree, and they accept him for who he is.
They do.
and what he does.
Which is more that we can say about our society.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm not sure why the task was for the Wart to go up to Cully and hopefully not get murdered when poor Cully himself was like, but please don't come up to me because I will feel really bad if I murder you.
I guess it's just showing bravery.
Basically, they want him to get like beat into the club, which is awful.
Yeah, and it seems like not very nice to use your friend who's suffering psychiatrically to be the beater, especially when he doesn't want to be the beater. He isn't
know.
like he's like, bring me that little hawk. I'm gonna beat him up.
He's like when a werewolf is like, "It's a full moon, put me in jail," and they don't, and then he turns into a werewolf.
Oh, it is like that.
I also thought of Sloth from Goonies
Hey, you guys.
and how he's used as like the muscle,
Yeah.
but really he just wants a baby Ruth.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so then we have ants, which this is like the most sci-fi part to me.
Anti-communism.
Anti-communism, rigid hierarchy. There we go.
I'm dead.
It actually
Throw
reminded
this
me.
all away. Throw this podcast away.
It actually reminded me of 1984, like the everything not forbidden is compulsory, like
Right.
very much like this is here is your ant dystopia, which makes
was.
sense.
Interesting. They speak basically in binary. Everything's done, not done.
God, my day to day is just not done.
I liked the way he wrote that scene though. Like the done not done was really interesting.
It
to
was.
me. It's an interesting way of approaching a thing we all are very familiar with.
I think the ant was maybe the most successful animal lesson.
I like the goose.
Okay.
Oh yeah, the goose is my favorite.
I also really like the badger.
Yeah, the badger's cool too.
It's not very successful, but I liked it a lot.
From the ant, I want to mention there's one line that I really like that maybe I should save for fantastical food, but he has to make an ant mash and the other ants eat it out of his crop. And the narrator says, he was a dumbwaiter from which dumb diners fed. Dumb diners. I really did not like that chapter. I confess I was bored through a lot of this book. And during that chapter, I was like, but I laughed out loud at that sentence.
Yeah, the idea that you would have to just give food to whoever wants it. That's my idea of heaven, or my idea of hell. Like, no.
Oh.
I feel like that was the most hit you over the head with the lesson one.
Yeah, well, maybe that's why, because it was just easy to understand.
And it's very clear where T.H. White stands on that, I think.
I mean, I do think everyone should have free food, but maybe not from my throw-up stomach.
Maybe not compulsory free
Give me that
food.
bread.
Like, I don't want someone to come into my house and take all my food and give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
I need food too.
Yeah.
But if I had like 10,000 foods, I would give you 10.
Sure.
But like, it's his job to share. I mean, maybe I'm an ant.
Plus, that's all you'll ever know.
I'm an ant.
Not done. Podcast not done yet. Yeah. All right, so then we have the geese, which I think, again, is maybe the most beautiful animal one.
Part.
He learns a caring, calm, and beautiful sort of democratic socialism, where things are shared, but nests are private property.
Mm-hmm. And like they have sort of a interesting way of choosing their next leader when they do have leaders, but it's sort of like a group will lose their leader and they go looking for a person who's already a leader who needs more people or something like that.
Do you need a new goose admiral? I'm
Yeah,
here.
it's interesting.
Yeah, and they're like, of course we don't fight each other. We have so many predators, which I wish that humanity would face that. Like, we've got hunger and disease. And
We're our only predator.
Yeah, when Wart asks her, what's her name? Leoleok?
Yeah.
Leoleok. He asks her about war, and they're having this kind of who's on first moment because he's like, oh, God, geese are so warlike. And she's like, she doesn't understand what he's talking about. And then when she realizes it's war between geese, she's like, oh, who would do such a thing? That's disgusting.
She like just leaves. She's like, I can't talk to you anymore.
Yeah.
I do think his sort of youthful vision of violence is interesting. Like, he sees knights as being very romantic, and but he's never seen actual war, so he doesn't know that these games that they're playing are mimic. It's a mimic of real, like, awful war. I wonder if he's gonna see it eventually, and it's kind of sad.
So in the first 10 pages of the second book I was reading last night, he's had a battle. He's like 22, I think, in that book. And he's talking with Merlin over the ramparts, and he was like, yeah, that was a pretty fun battle. And Merlin was like, excuse me. And he's like, oh yeah, 700 peasants died. And he goes, maybe it wasn't so fun. So you get to see these lessons that he learns like played out, which is really cool. And
That's
he like, it takes him a minute because like he's taught as a squire to be like, yeah, violence is the be all end all. But then he realizes, no, it's not. So
I liked the goose one because it felt like the closest thing to like a real community that you see too.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody else, like all humans always are like every man for himself to a certain degree. And then all the rest of the animals are it's not very, it's communal, but not community, if that makes sense.
It's more like rigidly hierarchical. They've got like the army birds and like the mean fish.
Yeah.
But we have like just like a goose commune.
And the way it's written is so pretty. It's very clear his like natural history love is coming out in that part. I liked it.
And with the goose, this is something that I read. I can't take credit for this, but when he's flying with the geese, there's like a comment that you can't see borders between countries or states or nations when you're up that high. It's just the blue dot.
Mm-hmm.
Carl Sagan.
And he kept saying that the earth was pouring underneath them, which makes me always think of Colonel Hadfield, just the astronaut, and how he wrote that he never gets tired of looking out the window of the spaceship. And he used the phrase, the pouring glory of the earth, which is one of my favorite phrases of all time.
Oh, I love that.
I like the idea of the earth pouring beneath you. It's good.
It's a big old hole. No, that's not a big old hole. It's a big old rock.
There are holes in it.
Big old hole.
Yeah, hole in space. All right. Then finally we have the badger, a badger who's getting his PhD, which is very silly.
I loved that. I liked that they had this weird little badger colony underneath the earth that had like wood paneled halls.
Yeah. So
great.
From the badger, he has a discussion about how man became a tyrant because man got to choose from God his tools, right?
Yep.
And he's like, I just want to be man. And he learns that the only warlike creatures out of all the living beings on the earth are 5 varieties of ant, 1 termite, and humans. Literally nothing else.
And that humans retain their fetal form throughout their whole life because we didn't pick like, I want a beaver tail or I want big claws. We were like, no, I just want to be the boss. So we stayed babies, which I was thinking about. I was like, that is true. Like We can't just like burrow and live in a burrow. We build and
His big head.
We're
bad
hairless
backs.
blobs with a big head, and
Yeah.
we can't protect ourselves in the wild.
No.
No tail, no feathers.
I still can't protect myself in the wild.
You could use a tool though. You
Maybe.
could pick up a stick.
Maybe.
Did y'all look up any of the falconry or boar hunting words?
Nope.
There were so many, and I kept meaning to go back and look them up because I kept picturing Ella as one of the hunting dogs.
Me too.
It's like Ella and a beagle, and they were friends.
It's hard. Ella would be friends with a beagle. It's hard to imagine her doing something.
Useful?
Well, she can hear us.
I'm sorry. No, she can't. Look
She
at her.
was good at running circles around places.
That's right.
She won like a dozen races, I think, before she got fired. I thought it was funny that Marion, during the Robin Hood sequence, is referred to as a kind of golden vixen because they were foxes in the Disney movie, and a vixen is a girl fox.
Oh.
Isn't that funny?
That is funny.
Interesting. I missed
Remember
that
how
part.
sexy those foxes are, too?
I still have a crush on that
Everyone's
freaking fox.
first crush.
Still got a crush on that fox.
Maybe that's the next Disney cartoon I want to watch.
I
one is
rewatched it
cute.
fairly recently. It
Are
holds
they
up.
still hot?
Oh, yeah, it holds up.
All right, that exhausts my talking points. What y'all got?
I was disappointed that Madame Mim was not in this.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about her.
So apparently, I think that scene with Madame Mim the witch is in the original version, and then I think did not make a later edit, which had some stuff added. So it seems like a fairly significant edit. And I didn't realize that because I also had the audiobook. And so I listened to Madame Mim in the audiobook, but I was not like I was not switching back and forth in the sense that I would listen to a chapter and not read it. I still read everything on the page. So when I was reading and I finished and I was like, did I just miss the Madame Mim chapter? So then I went back and searched for Mim in my ebook. I didn't find it anywhere.
Huh.
So then I said to the internet, what's going on with Madame Mim? And you would not believe the outrage on Reddit
Oh, I believe it.
that these chapters are missing from the later version. So I was just lucky that my ebook or that my audiobook had it because it's so good. And it is a lot more involved than what happens in the cartoon. But the wizards battle where they're saying the things that they are back and forth, that's in there. And it's basically the same. But there's a preamble to it where the Wart and Kay get locked up by Mim in cages, and there's a talking goat in one of the cages, and they work together with the goat to escape. And Wart does something very selfless. So the goat has heard Madame Mim say the spell to unlock the cages. So he's able to tell the Wart how to get out. And the original plan is that the Wart's going to get out. He's going to go home. He's going to get Merlin to come back and save them. And then for some reason, I can't remember exactly what it is, but Wart decides it makes more sense if the goat is the one who leaves. And so he just has to trust that the goat is going to go get Merlin and come back. And the goat's like, are you serious? Because the goat's like, I'm old. I don't care about me, but you guys should get out. And there's also a bird that she keeps in a cage and doesn't take good care of. And he's like, and I want the bird to go free. And then the Wart's like, no, you go. You can run faster than me or something. I can't remember exactly why. And the goat's like, what? And then the goat goes and finds Merlin. And then they have the wizard battle. And, it's all fine. And then we go on to another chapter where the Wart is another animal. But it's a really good chapter.
Like that's how the Wart learns delegation.
I think they could have replaced the bird one with that. The boring bird one, not the goose one.
Yeah.
The military bird
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Because that was short and again, it wasn't great.
I enjoyed listening to it so much. And there's the Audible audiobook narrated by Neville Jason is really good. He's a wonderful narrator. So while reading this, sometimes I was kind of bored. I always enjoyed listening to him narrate it because he does such a good job. And it is the whole thing. It's Once and Future King. So it's a lot of bang for your buck if you get the audiobook.
I love that you're still so dedicated to taking tape.
I've always been big on taking tape before I even knew what it was called.
I tried to listen to an audiobook on my lunchtime walk last week, and I got 3 minutes in and then got confused. And then I was like, I can't do it. They're just not for me.
It depends on what it is and the narrator for me. So like this one I can really listen to and really enjoy. But a lot of times I tune it out. Like it just becomes white noise, which really helps me sleep.
Yeah. Yeah,
which is also a form of taking tape.
What? Do you listen to it at 1:1 speed or? Because I tried to speed it up because they talk so slow.
No, I couldn't pay attention to it if I speeded it up.
Interesting.
Was there any indication in your internet researches about why he took it out? The
No.
mem thing?
No.
Interesting.
But I did not. Research would be too generous of a term.
Half-assed.
I just
internet
Googled.
research.
I thought that I just wasn't able to find it, or that I was like spelling Mim incorrectly or something. So I Googled Madam Mim. What chapter is Madam Mim? And then I found all these outraged posts about why isn't that in there?
I did some research, and it's unclear why things were removed and added in.
Because, it's interesting. The women, just fast forward a little bit. The women in the book are there are three.
Yeah,
have
there's not much to talk
Mother,
about.
maid, and crone. And so if Mim had been left in there might actually have been a more fleshed out female character, which is really sad that there's...
She was just another bad crone.
So she didn't have any motivation?
I don't remember. I don't remember that specifically. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but it was another like a one-off like monster of the week kind of chapter. I just think it's good, and I like his interaction with the goat, his conversations with the goat, and I do think that the wizard's battle is very neat.
Well, it would be interesting to see Merlin do something. Like Merlin does he does everything in the book, but like you don't see it.
Yeah.
Right?
He's kind of like Dumbledore too, like and people have said that in comparison.
Dumbledore's definitely Merlin. 100%. Yeah.
But like you don't see Dumbledore do a ton until like the very end, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
You just know he's powerful.
Because he's got a pointy hat and a beard that he like knits into his
Which
neck.
everybody else dresses like normal, and he dressed like normal in the 1930s, but now suddenly he's wearing these like flowing lizard robes all the time.
Yeah.
Lizard robes.
We can get more into the feminist favorite, but like again, there's not very many women in Sword and Stone, but like there's so many women and sisters and the other
It does
books.
come later. I mean, this book is just very male.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's boys' adventure fiction.
It is for sure.
100%. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have the nurse, Maid Marian, and Morgan Le Fay. And then there are some girl animals. That's true. There's like the main hawk is a female, I think. The goose, his little girl crush is a female goose.
And I think Morgan Le Fay doesn't really fit into any of like the three archetypes. She's kind of like
She's a crone witch.
she's not necessarily old though. She's just like a witch.
She lives in a
Well,
lard
she's,
house.
She's definitely middle-aged.
What
She's
a
very specifically middle-aged.
What a strange. They're all tied to pillars of pork.
Yeah.
That's my fantastic food.
Oh, is it? I have a question. Did we talk about the Sandman while we were recording, or was that before we were recording?
I don't
You
think I
mentioned
did.
it while we were recording.
Oh, I did.
I don't think I know
mention
anything
it.
about
Okay.
the Sandman.
Oh, okay. Well, so I've only seen the show, so I haven't read the comics, but it's based on a Neil Gaiman comic, and so the episode in question is Morpheus, who's the god of dreams and sleep and stuff. So he goes to hell because he's looking for something. What is he looking for? A mask. His helm. He's looking for his helm. And so Lucifer, played by our favorite Brienne of Tarth, they face off. And the way they face off is just like this. And she starts out and says, I am a dire wolf. Which is maybe a fun nod to Game of Thrones. I don't know if it's in the comic or not. But then they go back and forth being like bigger and badder things. And like they're not actually really doing anything to each other. They're saying it. And then like you see a cutaway scene of like what would be happening if you were a wolf or if you were an earthquake or if you were the plague or whatever. So it's a lot like, I mean, it's exactly like this. It's exactly
100%.
this.
That's a nod to this. Gotta be.
Homage, not ripoff.
Yeah.
So that's episode 4 of The Sandman called A Hope in Hell.
Cool.
What about Pelennor and Grumor in love?
I loved them. So I loved them. They fight and then they just sort of wander off together and live together for a while.
on a feather bed.
And
The
then
feather bed. But then he got.
well,
then they broke up.
Pelennor gets all mad because Grimoire is keeping him from living out his meeting his potential.
questing
and he
beast got
left
sick.
the questing beast all by herself.
The questing beast, it's funny. With nobody to quest after her, she just withers.
I know.
What is that like? That's like a kid's movie when like people stop believing in it, they disappear. What is that like?
Like Tinkerbell.
Maybe that's what it is.
It's also like American Gods.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
They are cute. I do think Pelennor and Grimoire are cute, though. I was happy for them. I didn't know if the questing beast was even real. I just thought maybe it was something that Pelennor said so that he didn't have to, like, go marry a wife or something. He's like, sorry, I can't marry your princess. I have to keep chasing this beast.
Amazing. There were real fumets.
There were.
So
when they made the fake questing beast, it's like you'll be the bat because you can make the noise, and then you've got the snake head. It's so silly, but I love this.
Did
book.
you know what fumets were?
No.
I learned from context clues.
After I read the book, I did, but
I knew what they were from A Wind in the Door, which is a sequel to A Wrinkle in Time.
yeah.
And Prognowski's had fumets, and they were like pretty glittery, feathery things. And then he's like, that's my poops.
nope, this poops.
So I've been trying to figure out, do you think this book has an oppressive fantasy feeling?
Oh, for sure.
See, I don't.
Okay, I came up with a subgenre, which I call cheeky fantasy.
Maybe that's what I like.
And it's, in my cheeky fantasy section of the library, I would put this book, I would put The Hobbit, I would put The Last Unicorn, and I would put The Princess Bride.
Perfect.
I do love The Princess Bride.
They're all things that are self-aware, winking at you a little bit. The Hobbit maybe is not so self-aware, but they are winking at you a little bit. They're very clever.
There's a reference to golf in The Hobbit, so
That's true. That's true.
I think that if you have never read The Last Unicorn, you should.
It's so good.
It's very good.
They have Taco Tuesday.
It's
cool.
It's I think that's a perfectly good sum up of those types of books. It's like
Thank you. And it's not a criticism. I like those books.
No, and I don't mean to criticize books that have the oppressive fantasy feeling. Even though the term OFF sounds negative, it's not. It's just there's oppressive science fiction feelings too. Like Robert Heinlein is a master of it. But I just wonder why I can love this book with my whole heart, and then with The Hobbit, I'm just like,
I wondered that too, because when I read the name Grummore Grummersome, I highlighted it in my ebook, and the note I wrote was, okay, Haley.
I mean, I agree that is a dumb name.
I wonder if it's because it's grounded in history.
I think that's what it is, because I love English history so much.
Yeah.
And I love, and I'm pretty sure C.S. Lewis likes nature too, but like the way he talks about nature is just really, it just speaks to me in this. I don't know. And my family.
C.S. Lewis? What do you mean?
Not C.S. Lewis.
Tolkien?
Tolkien.
Okay.
Because, I mean, I still stand by the fact that the only thing about Lord of the Rings that I really don't like is the hobbits. Everything else, the elves are cool, the world is cool. So, that's all. But
The hobbits are the silliest of the peoples.
Well, I wouldn't call The Lord of the Rings cheeky fantasy. The Hobbit,
yeah.
though,
Which
I
is
would
a
call
children's
cheeky
book.
fantasy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's definitely got a different feel. Have you ever read The Hobbit?
I've tried over a dozen times.
Okay.
My dad, it's one of my dad's favorite books, and he kept a copy of it on his bedside table, and he asked me to read it probably every year growing up. And I tried. I do, because I will read any book, but like I couldn't get into it.
I mean, you definitely have to get past the first part, which is just dwarves dwarving.
Yeah.
And they all have rhyming names, and it's ridiculous, you know.
On that subject, hawks named Balin and Balin.
Yes.
Balin really is a dwarf.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So those are basically like Balin, Dwalin, Ori, Nori,
Yep.
Dory.
I wonder if no, T.H. White went to Cambridge. Because Tolkien and
They had to know each other.
well,
At least-
Tolkien and C.S. Lewis they hung out at Oxford and wrote at the same time, but I think Lord of the Rings and this would have come out around the same time. So I
Yeah.
don't know if they could have influenced each other.
I wonder. I know that towards the end of his life, T.H. White just moved to the Channel Islands and was like a hermit. But
Is it like stealing a baby name? I've been rewatching Sex in the City.
I have too.
Did you? I just
She
watched
gets
the
so
one-
mad because
I just
what's her toe
watched the
steals
one
her name.
Where their friend stole the
Shayla.
baby named Shayla. I just watched it yesterday.
how was Kevin enjoying Sex in the City?
I mean, he's just sort of like in the room when I'm watching it. I did make him watch the one with Timothy Oliphant where she's dating him and he's in his 20s and he's so dumb. It's very funny.
Is he the musician one?
No,
I'm sure that he is in a band, but that's off camera.
his character is she's dating a guy in his 20s. And that's the
he's
guy.
just
He's
a guy,
the guy in his 20s.
Like instead of coffee filters, he uses toilet paper to filter the coffee, and then there's no toilet paper in the bathroom, and the scene is so funny.
the roommate.
It's been like such a comforting rewatch. Like I don't even skip the intro because I love hearing
Every
the
time I watch
music.
Succession, I watch like 3 Sexes in the Cities to like cleanse my palate. It's like, it is fantasy. Sex in the City has an oppressive fantasy feeling.
I said to Kevin, I said, this is science fiction because there is apparently no worry about any type of STD.
No.
And there's no black people in New York.
There's no black people in New York, and there's no subway system.
Oh, no,
That's right.
They
All
either have
cab
to
money.
have cab
All
money
cabs.
or they walk.
Or they're walking in their high heels down the street.
She spends her cab money and then she's like, well, that was my cab money, so I walked 48 blocks in heels. And I'm like,
Get a subway.
get on the train.
And she's a writer that affords like that huge
Listen,
apartment.
this is a constant.
Yeah.
That is
quibble
at
with
least
this
a
show.
joke. She's like, it's a rent control. She always says it's a rent controlled apartment. So at least the show is like, I know.
Where does she live? Like the Upper East Side?
She overlooks Central Park. That's all I can tell you.
So like Midtown, I guess. Or
She
actually,
lives
that
in
could be
like she
anywhere.
lives in like this she lives in an apartment in what looks like some sort of brownstone, but I don't know.
She says a rent controlled apartment overlooking Central Park is, I think.
Yeah, I mean Central Park spans like 40 blocks, so it could be anywhere north, south. Yeah.
Anyway,
Feminist fave?
My feminist fave. So Maid Marian, apart from having the name Maid, she is a badass in this, and she like is a warrior. I thought that was really cool. She in a lot of the movies she just exists to be rescued, but she's like part of the attack crew in this.
I did think it was funny that every time they said what she did, they talked about how Robin Hood did better. But she was very proficient. I don't think he was necessarily purposefully trying to take away from that, but it was just funny.
my favorite was the goose, who is described as a blue stocking. Speaking of anachronisms, she says that he says something to her that surprises her. I can't remember exactly what it was. And then she says, but she wanted to keep an open mind being a blue stocking.
Aww.
Which, if the listener isn't familiar, because it was a word that I sort of knew, but I didn't know the exact definition, so I looked it up. According to Wikipedia, blue stocking is a term for an educated intellectual woman, originally a member of the 18th century Blue Stockings Society, but it went on to just mean like a smart lady.
Cute.
The last time I was in New York City, there was a Blue Stockings bookstore. It's a feminist
cool.
bookstore.
I wonder if it's still there.
It is. I walked right by it. It was closed because somebody had COVID.
Mine was Maid Marian, so yeah.
Although there is something to be said for Morgan Le Fay reclining on a pat of butter. Or no, lard. It's
Her lard bed.
That's my misogynist moment.
Yeah, no, that is my misogynist moment as well. Okay, misogynist moment. Equally, Morgan Le Fay reclining on a literal bed of lard could also be the misogynist moment.
I mean, my part of that was that she's fat, dowdy, middle-aged with black hair and a slight mustache.
Oh my God, I must have blacked out when I read that, because now that you say it, I remember it.
I don't remember that. I
Of
must have
course,
blacked
the
out as
evil
well.
woman is a fat, middle-aged woman.
The fact that I didn't highlight it means that I blacked out.
I read so much differently when I have an actual book because I can't underline and go back to it. Because if I
Yeah.
underline a book, I don't remember to go find it.
Yeah.
So that is.
I had an ebook
crappy.
though, so that really means that I passed out. That passage made me faint.
I didn't have it either. We both just thank you, Amy, for rescuing this feminist podcast.
Stretched upon her glorious bed of lard.
So I want to talk about, what do you think the bed of lard is? Is it like molded into like a race car bed? Because lard melts.
Oh, I think it's like a beanbag chair.
Oh, I was picturing like a
waterbed.
chaise longue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think she's like greasy? Is she naked?
Oh yeah, she's greasy.
Why would she have a bed of lard? And
Because the whole house was made of weird food.
I know, but like a pork pillar sounds delicious.
Lard does sound soft.
Yeah, but lard doesn't taste good. Ugh.
Well, she's not licking it. She's laying in it.
Like you do with a lard bed. So I'm on a lot of nostalgic TikTok 80s things, and do you remember how everybody growing up had a waterbed?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Not my parents.
My
all
parents did.
All my friends' parents had waterbeds, and it was the coolest, and I haven't seen one in 30 years.
Can I tell you something though that's very traumatic?
Uh-oh.
A waterbed, probably too soft. My parents definitely had a separate sex bed.
Oh, no.
They had two beds in their bedroom. They had, because we lived in the
Is
basement
this
apartment.
getting edited out?
No. Should it be? Maybe.
Well, only one's still alive. She's not going to listen.
They slept in a water bed, but there was like a regular spring mattress day bed in the bedroom.
What were the sizes? Like a queen waterbed?
Yeah, I guess.
Then like a smaller, like twin? Day
like
bed?
yeah, like a day bed, where it's almost just like a couch.
It's like a hump couch.
Well, the one time in my life I walked in on them, they were on that. So I just think they had. This is my experience, because I walked in and I saw it happening. Now I feel bad. I don't want to embarrass my mother, but I think they slept in the water bed and then they had the day bed for the sex bed, because I can imagine it's not good to. The water bed's probably not there.
I mean, they might have done both on both.
Sure. I mean, you got two beds, my God, but.
Was it like kitchen bed? Because I imagine a basement apartment wasn't very large, so how they have two beds?
I mean, it was kind of, because, I guess the apartment itself wasn't, but it was like they had just thrown up a little bit of drywall and basically made two rooms.
Yeah.
So my parents' bedroom was a gigantic bedroom and mine was a little kid bedroom. and those were pretty much the rooms. I mean, we had a kitchen and stuff down there. I'm not trying to make it sound like
a living room or
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, it basically had most of the footprint of the upper level of the house.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
So it wasn't like super tiny or anything, but it was 2 bedrooms, and my parents was really like a bedroom and a half size, maybe.
That makes sense.
And the half had the sex bed in it. I think.
They also probably read on it or watched TV on it.
Well,
maybe.
sure.
No,
But
nope.
This is only there's a velvet rope.
Designated.
I saw it. I'm just saying, I saw it happen, and I can't unsee it. And it's been 35 years. I can't unsee it.
I'm glad I never did the walk-in thing.
You didn't?
I did. It was pitch dark though, so I didn't see anything. I just heard things that will stay with me. The silence of the lambs will stay with me forever.
I mean, I remember one time I found condoms on my dad's underwear drawer because that's where he kept his hairbrush that we all coveted.
My dad, an interesting part of that sentence.
So my dad was always hiding things. My dad did not. My dad did not like living with a bunch of women because we would take all of his shit and lose it, and so
Women be losing stuff.
yeah, and we did because like we would use it.
Well, you
and
were
then,
two
like,
little kids. Is probably why you lost their stuff.
And so the common
it was the
refrain from my
vaginas.
dad was that he was going to buy a lock box and keep like his hairbrush, one good comb, and like just have things that he kept off limits. We never did, but yeah, we were always stealing. So I was looking for the hairbrush buried in his underwear drawer, and I found a pack of condoms, and I was like, "It happens."
Oh man, I'm impressed you knew what they were.
I mean, I was like 10, so.
I don't know.
I don't
if
know that I would have known.
I don't know if I would have known.
Well, you have to remember that my parents' bathroom had all the Playboys.
Oh, that's
And
true.
I
You had
learned-
toilet Playboys. That's right.
Yeah, I also learned a lot about sex from the Book of Home Remedies. There was one for like sexual dysfunction, and I was like,
Oh,
orgasm, what is that?
Oh wow.
something to be remedied.
Yes.
That's for damn sure.
Or like, yeah, it was like sexual problems or impotence, and it was just like, you can do some sexy things. And I was like, so yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, this is definitely staying in.
So to tie this back to medieval times, so so this is very interesting. So the idea of your parents having sex is something that you don't encounter very often, and if you do, it's by accident. But if you lived in like the peasant house,
They were,
there was one
they were
room,
right next to you.
Yeah, you were in
come
one
on.
thatched room.
one thatched room, your parents were fucking
Thatched
constantly
with butter.
6 kids. You're like, stop.
on their lard bed
Like,
while you're
try to
chained to your
sleep.
pork.
And like, it probably wasn't sexy. They were probably all clothed. They were probably stinky. But like, yeah, they just did it.
I just imagine everyone had raging UTIs, like, because there was no bathing.
There was no bathing.
Oof.
I bet things did not smell good.
Well, if nothing smells good, then everything smells good,
Good
I
point.
guess.
That's true.
Okay, wow, what a detour. Sorry, everybody.
I think that was our boob talk for the day.
I wonder how much of that Kevin's going to take out.
Kevin, I think you should take some of that out.
As always, I leave soap stuff for Lori, but there's not.
I mean,
much.
there's no boobs in this, right?
It's not. Oh, I didn't notice any
Oh
boobs.
shit. Yeah, but
Were there
boobs, I
any?
had
Were
none.
there any teats on any of the animals?
I didn't
I
notice
don't
any.
think so.
Oh, for my misogynist moment, briefly, I just wanted to say it wasn't a moment, but every single time Wart encounters a woman, he's skeptical about her. He's like, oh, I can't believe I have to be in the girls group. And then he realizes how good at what she does Maid Marian is. And then he's like, oh, I don't know if I want to hang out with this girl goose. And then he's like, oh, she's like actually really amazing and nice and smart. And every single time he's like, a girl. And then he's like, oh, actually, she's great. But he never gets to like, hello, a woman person. I will wait and find out what kind of person you are instead of being disappointed that you're a woman person.
I like that he does learn, so that means that he was thinking about it, which is good.
But then he doesn't do it the next time.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because he's like a
also
9-year-old
10.
dumb
I mean,
boy.
I am
That's
glad
true.
that he has the capacity to be like, oh, I was wrong. He just doesn't seem to be able to extrapolate that to the next situation.
Yeah.
But maybe it gets better for him. Maybe he's like,
It does.
my sister, I bet she's really good at sex.
Yeah. My wife will definitely not betray me with my best friend, and also the ugliest night. Do y'all know about this?
Yes, Lancelot.
So Lancelot
Must be ugly.
is Richard Gere in First Night.
But I knew that was wrong when I saw it somehow.
Oh.
So in the T.H. White version, he makes Lancelot like one of the ugliest men that ever existed.
Oh.
It's fascinating.
Well, maybe some men are ugly hot.
Yeah.
Proficiency
Driver.
hot.
I mean, he's
We
very
talked
good
about
at
this, right?
He's very
Yeah.
good at knighting. So.
Yeah, you're automatically hotter if you're good at something.
So yeah, soap stuff.
Oh, it's not great. I bet it gets soapier
It does
as it
get
goes
soapier,
on. But yeah, just happening upon the sword because Kay forgot his is a pretty incredible coincidence.
That's true. And in the last 3 pages.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it's not really your traditional soap stuff. But I'll allow it.
Yeah. When we got to that part, I forgot that I was reading Sword in the Stone. I was like, oh yeah. It's not just a book of animal adventures.
I fell asleep in the last 2 minutes of the movie. I did not see him pull the sword out of the stone.
It didn't happen. I like that they're like, where'd you get this sword? He's like, I don't know, some kind of war memorial.
Oh, that's very funny.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm sure they won't mind.
Did you like this book?
Oh, wait.
Did we do food?
I want to do
Oh,
fantastic.
shit.
My
I must have an
fantastical
old
food
version.
is my favorite quote of all time, which is, the prisoners were tied to pillars of marvelous pork.
Marvelous pork.
It's the best sentence ever.
Mine was breakfast at Merlin's when Wart first meets Merlin, which consisted of peaches, melons, strawberries, and cream, rusks. Rusks? What are rusks?
Probably a bird. Or a potato.
Oh, brown trout, grilled perch, chicken deviled enough to burn one's mouth out, kidneys and mushrooms on toast, fricassee, curry, and a choice of boiling coffee or of best chocolate made with cream in large cups.
Rusk is a hard, dry biscuit.
Oh, it's like Melba toast.
Oh, it's hardtack.
Or twice-baked bread. It's like Melba toast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine was the breakfast as well, because I kept thinking about what best chocolate is.
Yeah, me too.
Is that like fancy ketchup? Is it a term of art?
World's finest chocolate like you sold in elementary school.
Yeah, world's finest chocolate. TM. Okay. Did you like this book?
Yes.
I think that this is a good book. I didn't love reading it because there wasn't enough of like a unified plot. But I think that the writing is good, and I acknowledge it's an objectively good book. It's just not my cup of tea, really. And I thought a lot of it was cute and clever. I enjoyed a lot of it.
It's cute. I liked a lot of the writing.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
cute. A lot of times I was just like, I just don't want to watch this boy be another animal.
Yeah.
But I think it was cute, and I thought in particular the dialogue is good. So I think it's a good book.
Yeah, the animal scenes are actually my least favorite parts. I just like the glimpses of medieval life. Like that first couple of pages where they talk about making hay, and like the people are so tan and their teeth look so white, which is so funny because you know they weren't brushing their teeth. So yeah, I like the way he writes, and I don't know, I just have such a fondness for this book.
I do think it wouldn't hurt the book to go back and take out the racial epithets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it could be maybe modernized
Mhm.
a little
But
bit.
it still keeps 99.999%.
Oh,
Exactly.
I blacked out about that too. When I
Yeah.
remember when I texted you guys and I was like, this bird has just used the N word.
I was like, it did?
I did not expect to just meet a bird and then it said, and I was like, whoa. And I understand what he was doing there was like making the bird like a person who's just drank the MAGA Kool-Aid is
Yeah.
really what's happened to this bird. And yet I was like, this is a children's book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to say. And also, he's British. Like, you especially don't need to use that word.
Oh, we don't have a lock on racism over here.
Yeah, I
I
actually
know.
looked up the history
Yeah.
of the word to try to figure out if it would be a word that would be used during that time, and I can't remember what I landed on because I just like
Probably not medieval times, but
I just blanked on that whole thing until you just mentioned that.
Yeah.
on that note,
Star Wars or Lord of the Rings? We've already talked about this. but
yeah,
should we do it
Star
again?
Wars because Merlin's Yoda.
Merlin's Yoda and Ward is Luke and Cavill is Chewbacca, and there's sword fighting.
And Wart also has a secret father who's a famous ruler.
Ah!
But I said,
Duh!
but I said it has an oppressive fantasy feeling and even has hawks named Balin and Balin, which are basically dwarf names. But also, the thing that's going to happen down the line with Arthur and his sister is,
That's a little Game of
yeah.
Thrones.
we're glad Luke and Leia
Luke and
didn't
Leia,
end
yeah.
up there. You
That's
know.
true.
Listen, there, but for the grace of God. You know?
So yeah, I think it's Star Wars.
We haven't had one be Star Wars in a long time. This is good.
Especially this fantasy book.
I know. I love when that happens. It makes me so happy. Do you remember when the courtship of Princess Leia was Lord of the Rings?
You know something? I'm glad you brought that up. I have a correction corner.
From that? From
yeah,
years ago?
yeah. I remember when I read it thinking it was too silly to feel like Star Wars to me. And then when we were sitting in the theater on Amy's birthday, May the 4th, watching Empire Strikes Back, and so much of it was so silly, I was like, you know something? I was extremely wrong. I was extremely wrong. Star Wars is silly. It is serious, but it is also
funny.
It's funny.
I think that they're
humor.
kids' movies.
for sure.
You know what I mean?
For
Absolutely.
sure. So I think I was, I am a Star Wars casual, but I think at that point in time, I was like very much a Star Wars novice. And I take back what I said.
Okay.
I saw
We
today
live, we learn.
an
Exactly.
announcement that Dave Filoni is making a standalone Star Wars movie called Heir to the Empire. Not based on the Timothy Zahn one, but probably will be feature parts of it. But I'm excited to see what it's about.
I wish it was Hair to the Empire.
Heir to the
It'd be like a mishmash of hair and Star Wars.
It's a musical.
It'd be amazing.
my favorite one of my favorite genres of puns is salon puns. So like growing up in Savannah, there was the Hairport,
Yes.
Oh,
like a cut above.
we had a place called Hairport East in Conyers.
Oh, we also had the south one in Savannah. Yes, coming up next, we are reading for Lori's birthday month.
Yes, To Say Nothing of the Dog by Connie Willis, which I just borrowed from the library yesterday, and it is long.
How long? I have it on a pile in my room somewhere.
Do I have that yet?
It's like 600 or 700 ebook pages. Now I have my font a little bit on the larger side, but it still looks like it's pretty long.
I wonder how many times the Carillon bell will ring in it.
Find out next month on Hugo Girl, the podcast.
Bum, bum, bum. We're probably not by the time that episode comes out, but very soon every member of Hugo Girl will be over the age of 40.
Oh, that's true. We're old.
No, we're
welcome,
not.
Welcome to my bracket.
A
We're not
65-year-old
old.
woman on a sailboat on Saturday said, "Haley, you're so young and you don't even know it."
Oh,
She's right.
I
That is
know.
true.
It was nice of her to say.
My doctor today said, well, even though your cholesterol is so high, you're so young that I wouldn't want to put you on a statin just yet. And I said, thanks, I think.
hanging out with my nearly 80-year-old mother always reminds me that I'm young.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
It's all perspective.
All right.
We
See ya.
done?
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Leave us a review.
Hugo girl. Hugo girl. Hugo girl. A hilarious podcast.
And I like his interaction with the goat, his conversations with the goat.